What happens in this building greatly impacts your life and mine. During the past 2 years, we've seen dramatic change in the way the government is affecting our lives. Today, we're going to talk about the ramifications of the health care reform bill and speculate on November's election as to how they're affecting the lives of America's unborn babies. Stay with us. Since President Obama took office nearly 2 years ago, he's been diligently working to enact policies and legislation attacking the very nature of our government and the sanctity of life. I sat down with Wendy Wright, president of Concerned Women for America. We discussed how President Obama's actions since entering office have earned him a title of the most pro-abortion president in our nation's history. Wendy, what do you think the Obama administration's goal is regarding abortion?
Well, President Obama has been the most pro-abortion president we have ever had. And that could be seen in him as a candidate as well. That when he served in the Illinois legislature, he even voted against the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. That was a bill that simply stated that if a baby is born alive, even a baby that survives an abortion, that baby's a person and deserves to be treated as a person. He voted against that. And since he's been in the presidency, he's continued his ideology, and that is that unborn children have no rights. Now, thankfully, he's not been able to get too much passed as far as his full agenda, but what he has gotten passed has been disturbing. That includes funding of abortion, both international abortions and domestic.
Congresswoman Jean Schmidt has represented Ohio's 2nd Congressional District for the past 5 years. While in Washington, I had a chance to visit with Jean, a longtime friend and former fellow pro-life advocate. Jean talked about the Obama administration's goal with regard to abortion. Jean, what would you say the current agenda is or goals for the Obama administration and the pro-abortion Democrats in charge of Congress right now?
Well, there's no secret that the current administration is very pro-choice, and they're not a pro-life administration. And I think that they want to move that agenda forward, as we have witnessed time and again over the last 20 months, whether it's been the Mexico City policy erosion or the health care bill or embryonic stem cell research. These are erosions into very pro-life policies that have been in place for a long time.
For the past 8 years, Congressman Steve King has been serving Iowa's 5th Congressional District in the House of Representatives. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee and is the ranking Republican on the Immigration Subcommittee. Congressman King notes the extreme position President Obama has taken in regard to publicly funded abortion on demand.
Well, I think it's clear that the Obama administration and President Obama is all about advancing abortion wherever he can. I mean, he's the person that stood on the floor of the Illinois State Senate and argued that a woman who went in to get an abortion had a right to a dead baby. I don't see that anything has changed. Right on when he was sworn in on January 20th of this year, and then we had the pro-life march here January 22nd. Right into that, he issued his first executive order that accelerated abortions in America, and I think that he's completely committed to the public funding of abortions. And if he could get it, he would be all about a National Health Care Act single-payer plan that funded abortions on demand.
When we return, we'll learn more about the health care reform bill and the steps pro-life members of Congress are taking to repeal it.
Look around you. We're surrounded by people who courageously face difficult obstacles life has thrown in their paths. Tune in each week to meet people who show there are positive, godly solutions to tough, critical situations. This Emmy Award-winning show tackles challenging life issues such as abortion, stem cell research, and adoption, and shows every human life is valuable and precious. Join us for inspiring stories of people facing life head-on.
Congressman Jim Jordan's been serving Ohio's 4th District for the past 4 years. While serving in Congress, Jim has championed legislation in defense of the unborn and has helped lead the fight on pro-family issues. He met with me in the Cannon House building on Capitol Hill to discuss the ramifications of the new Obama healthcare reform bill. How do you think the healthcare plan as passed will affect abortion across the United States?
Well, as passed, it's terrible. It's terrible in that it has huge tax increases in it. It's terrible in what it does, the lack of respect it has for the sanctity of life. And frankly, let's just be honest, the thing Americans hate most about this healthcare bill, you got to remember a fundamental fact about Americans. We don't like being told what to do. That's why we're Americans. I mean, we came here because in Europe they said you have to practice your faith a certain way, and they says, no, we don't. We'll go to America and we'll do it the way we think the good Lord wants us to. Here comes this healthcare bill with 2,700 pages of big bureaucrats in Washington getting between you and your doctor, and Americans say, we don't like it. Now, you add in the lack of respect for life, with their taxpayer dollars being used to take unborn life. But I think any objective examination of this law says dollars that are appropriated for implementation of the healthcare bill under the current structure can in fact be used in this terrible way. And so that's what we got to, if we win back the majority, the very first vote we should take is repeal the bill. We should repeal it, send it on to the Senate, see what happens there, hopefully get it to the President, force him to veto it, and then we should come back and go after the specific provisions in the bill. Say, okay, the 1099 provision, send that separately to the President, see if he'll veto that. The life issue, send that to the President, see if he'll pick the tax increase in the bill, pull those out, rescind those tax increases, send it to the, and demonstrate to the American people. I mean, this way American politics is done. You show the American people you're fighting for the things they care about, the things that are important. Send it to the President, force him to veto it, or maybe he'll, find the light and see the light and sign some of these things. That's how you do it. But under current examination, I think a realistic examination where the bill is right now, taxpayer dollars can in fact be used to take innocent unborn life.
Wendy, as a Washington-based organization that deals with the abortion issue, how would you say the passage of the health care reform bill has affected your agenda and the agenda of pro-life congressmen and women?
The healthcare reform bill had two opposite effects. One is that the bill does allow for funding of abortion, and that was one of the greatest losses of our movement that our movement has experienced. But on the other side, when abortion funding itself was put to a vote in the House of Representatives, we had a strong majority. Well, now we've proven that even with a liberal Democrat majority in the House of Representatives, we could win a vote on abortion. So it was, in a sense, like the best of times and the worst of times. We proved that the public wants to have limits on abortion. We don't want to be funding abortion. We don't want abortion mainstreamed in our health care. But yet, when it came to the final bill, we lost. So congressmen need to remember that in the upcoming Congress. They need to remember that vote.
How are you and your fellow members of Congress working to undo Obamacare as it exists today?
Well, part of the pledge that we want to make to the American public with our agenda for the rest of this year is to repeal Obamacare completely. It's not just abortion that's a problem with Obamacare. It's the cost of health care. It's the erosion of the kind of health care that we are used to in the United States. It's the ability for government to take over health care in full that seems to be embedded in this enormous bill that's costing over $1 trillion and not doing anything to affect the cost of our policies, only making them go up. I could go on and on and on, Brad, about the problems with this bill. You can't tweak it. You really have to repeal it. And we need to replace it with some commonsensical solutions that the American public wanted regarding health care, affordability and accessibility, neither of which really is truly covered in this bill.
But Jean, reality being what it is, even if the House votes to overturn the health care bill, it's certain to be vetoed, and you're probably not going to override a veto. If that's the case, what would your agenda be then?
Well, I think you have to look at 1994 and the Congress then and Clinton and how many times it took for their issues to get resolved with the president. I think you just have to keep going back and saying, no, we're not going to pass this agenda until abortion is, well, not just abortion, but the health care is repealed. And so you use that as your tool to get an agenda for the United States accomplished.
Congressman, what have you done so far to try to reverse Obamacare?
I typed up a request for a bill draft to repeal Obamacare. Interestingly, Michelle Bachmann was doing the same thing. Our bill draft requests came down within 3 minutes of each other, exactly the same 40 words, the last words of which were repeal Obamacare, now I'll quote, as if it had never been enacted, close quote. So that started the path of repealing Obamacare. I worked that bill as hard as I could, turned it into a discharge petition, which is the only tool that we have to circumvent Nancy Pelosi. She can't block a discharge petition. If we get 218 signatures on it, it will come to the floor and it will be voted on and it would pass. So I'm at 173 signatures now on the discharge petition. We have our first Democrat on there last week, and I'm challenging those other 33 Democrats that voted no on Obamacare, sign the discharge petition. Let's move the legislation and send a resounding message that this House rejects Obamacare. If we can get that done, that starts the momentum, and then if Republicans win the majority in this year and be seated in 2011, then we have to block all funding that would be used to implement Obamacare. We can do that with simply a majority in the House, whether or not the Senate agrees. And we'd have to do that through 2011 and 2012. And it is my prayer and my dream that we elect a president in 2012 whose first order of business would be to sign the repeal of Obamacare.
In a moment, we'll hear predictions for the upcoming November elections and learn how the outcome could prove a turning point for the pro-life movement.
Whether you're a student needing answers, a parent needing help, or a concerned citizen wanting to make a difference, Life Issues Institute has the resources you need to put your values into action. Life Issues Institute is an international educational organization committed to protecting innocent human life. Life Issues Institute knows what it takes. That's why millions throughout the world turn here for help. Life Issues Institute has authored more pro-life publications than any other entity in the world, and its materials are printed in over 30 languages. Radio broadcasts, newsletters, and a website filled to the brim with the answers you're looking for are just a click away. Go to facinglife.tv and click on the link to Life Issues Institute to find out more about how you can change the heart of a nation.
Due in part to the extreme pro-abortion actions of the Obama administration, many American citizens have grown dissatisfied with the U.S. government. As a result, the pro-life movement has been re-energized to make its voice heard. Congresswoman Jean Schmidt said the increased activities and enthusiasm of the pro-life grassroots movement could give pro-life candidates an edge in the November elections. Have you seen any evidence in your district or across the country that these last 2 years under the Obama administration has galvanized the pro-life grassroots movement?
I think it's made it much more energized. I'm seeing with my pregnancy centers across my district, and I have a lot of them, that they're getting a lot more volunteers and a lot more activity, and the folks on the other side of this issue are getting a little bit more nervous.
It's said that a lot of those who are pro-life and share conservative values are much more energized and enthused about getting to the polls compared to the other side. What's generally been your experience in your district and elsewhere?
Well, I can tell you, the folks that have a conservative attitude, whether it's on life issues, fiscal issues, or both, you couldn't there's nothing that will stop them from voting. They are energized beyond belief. And it's not just Republicans, it's conservative, Democrats, and independents as well. They see that our country has lost its way with the train wreck that we're on regarding fiscal policy. And they really don't want the public funding of abortion in any way, shape, or form. They feel, wherever they are on that issue, that we shouldn't be spending public monies on it. And so they're energized, and they're going to be going to the polls in great speed this coming November.
For the past 15 years, Congressman Walter B. Jones has been representing North Carolina's 3rd District. At the time of this interview, the congressman was extremely optimistic the November elections could prove a turning point for his party's standing in Congress. What would be your prediction as far as how it goes in the House and Senate on November 2?
I would say that the Republican Party has an excellent chance of taking back the House. I'm not sure that the Senate, the chances are as good as they are in the House. But the way I look at it, all we need is one House and we can slow the train down.
We've heard a lot about hope and change over these last 3 years, and it appears that the hope and the change has flipped aisles as far as where it's going to land.
Yeah.
What is your take on the election?
They're going to throw it. I mean, like I said before, they're so frustrated with this amazingly big government leftward lurch they've seen from Obama, Pelosi, and Reid.
I think you're being diplomatic when you say frustrated.
Yeah, they are. They are really fired up, and as I said, they're so mad at Democrats they're even willing to put Republicans back in charge. It's going to happen, in my opinion. Now, I may be wrong, but everything I see shows that the American people are going to give us one more chance. And we got to do the right thing. We can't act like they did 6-8 years ago and spend like crazy. We've got to get in there and go after it. I've introduced the only balanced budget in Congress. When we're elected next year, we got to work on getting our budget to a balance point so that we can ultimately begin to pay down this debt. And all you got to do is you got to get the ship headed in the right direction, send a message to the market, and good things start happening. And you cannot deal with the huge debt we have. You can never ultimately pay it down unless you have economic growth. So the key is getting our economy growing again. And you can't do that by raising taxes and over-regulating like they're doing right now. You got to get on the other path.
I'm excited about this upcoming election because there are so many strong pro-life conservative candidates who have won their primary, and they look like they're going to win the general election as well. In the House of Representatives and in the Senate, it looks like we could have 4 pro-life women in the Senate. Going from 0 to 4 would be a great progress. So I'm encouraged because these are not only candidates who say the right thing, they have a track record of doing the right thing. They have promoted pro-life legislation, they've been attacked for doing that, and they have not backed down.
Now, there's been some rumblings on the Republican side by a few individuals that are advocating a truce on social issues for this election. What is your opinion about that?
I think in an election year that the voter has a right to know how you stand on all issues, whether they be economic or social. And I think that any individual that advocates, let's not talk about pro-life issues, I'll use that for an example, is making a huge mistake. I mean, to me, that you're cheating the voter.
Recently, there's been some discussion on the Republican side by a few individuals that we need to call a truce on social issues during the election. What's your opinion about that?
Well, we're not calling a truce. In fact, today, as you and I speak, we're rolling out our agenda for the rest of the year. And in that agenda, we have social issues embedded in it, issues on life and on marriage.
The Republican leadership, who looks like they will soon be the Republican majority in the House, have already pledged to America that the defunding of abortion is a top priority. They stated that in their pledge to America. So we've got them in writing. They've put this in their pledge, and we're going to hold them accountable to their pledge.
I make this prediction: the more seats that Republicans pick up, if the optimists are right and it becomes 60, 70, 80 seats or more, there will be more and more young, principled conservatives that will stand stronger than anybody else, except me. Of course, I want to be in that group. And if that's the case, we can win this showdown with the president. We can repeal Obamacare, and we can give people back their freedom and their liberty.
Coming up, we'll hear how one person can truly make a difference in our government.
Look around you. Every day, heroes abound in our country. We're surrounded by people who courageously face difficult obstacles life has thrown in their paths. Tune in each week to meet people who show there are positive, godly solutions to tough, critical situations. We'll tackle challenging life issues such as abortion, stem cell research, adoption, and abstinence, and show that every human life is valuable and precious. Join us for inspiring stories of people facing life head on.
The past 2 years under President Obama's administration have been dark days for the pro-life movement. However, with pro-life congressmen diligently fighting the new health care reform bill and a positive outlook on the November election, a turning point could be heading our way. But it's up to American citizens to get involved and make sure their voices are heard. Gene, do you think the average person can make a difference? You think one person can make a difference in all this mess that the world's in?
Absolutely. Look at the Tea Party. That was just a handful of individuals that have really come together and put a face on the anger that has been brewing in this nation long before the Obama administration. They've allowed people that sit at home and felt that they were isolated to understand they have a band of brothers and sisters in this call to action. They've seen it in primaries where they've made a difference, and they're ready to make that same difference in November.
What would be your advice to those individuals who want to make a difference in America between now and the election?
Well, first off, make sure you're registered to vote. And if they have time, Brad, go to a call center and make some phone calls, whether it's a Tea Party call center or an Ohio Republican Party